Hey, Optimancers! I started to notice in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, published in 2020, that features and traits that recovered on a short rest were becoming few and far between. We even started to see previously published material, like the Blade Singer, having short rest recovery features replaced with features with what's become kind of standard for feature design, a number of uses equal to your proficiency bonus that recover after a long rest. With more recent publications, short rest recovery features are now completely absent. And with Monsters of the Multiverse, every race reprinted in that publication that previously had features that recovered on short rests now found those features had long rest recovery mechanics, either one use per long rest or proficiency bonus uses per long rest. Recent Unearthed Arcana also seems to be following the new standard that no class or racial feature is recovered on a short rest. So naturally, we speculate what's going to happen when the player's handbook is revised in 2024. Are short rests even going to exist? Or are short rests simply going to be a mechanic for expending hit dice and nothing else? The more I think about it, the more confident I am that what we're going to see isn't that short rests are going away entirely. We've seen recent design where hit dice get used for things other than short rest hit point recovery. And if hit dice are still going to remain, then I think it stands to reason that the primary purpose of hit dice, which is spending them to recover hit points on a short rest, is also going to remain. However, everything we've seen in the past year or so suggests to me that come 2024, a short rest is going to be for recovering hit points, and that's it. Any class, subclass, racial, or feat-based traits are going to need some kind of redesign so they are no longer recovered on short rests, whether that's long rest recovery or something else. And I want to speculate what it's going to look like when we get the player's handbook in 2024. What happens with things like Channel Divinity, Action Surge, Warlock pack slots, key points, and all the other short rest recovery stuff. Now, obviously, I am not involved in the redesign of the player's handbook, so this is all going to be complete speculation. Though some of it maybe is kind of what I want to happen more than what I think will happen. But I'll tell you what, if any of you D&D game designers end up watching this, please feel free to borrow any of these ideas. Before I do that though, I want to explain why I at least think this is a great change to the game. As players of D&D, we've simply come to accept that some classes are short rest classes and others are long rest classes. Sorcerers, Barbarians, and Rangers, for example, they're long rest classes. Other than expending hit dice, unless they're multi-class, a short rest really doesn't do much for these classes. Other classes like Fighters, Warlocks, and Monks get almost all their features back on a short rest, so they can really benefit from a short rest even without expending a single hit die. Other classes find themselves more in the middle ground. Clerics recover Channel Divinity, but not spells. Wizards can recover some spells after a short rest, but only once. Druids recover wild shapes, but other than some subclass features, otherwise get nothing back. Bards after level 5 recover inspiration, but not their spells. And this kind of variation, it actually kind of sounds cool, but I found in actual gameplay, it's just not helpful. You're playing a sorcerer and you're concentrating on a long duration spell, but you lose it because other party members need their short rest after every encounter. So while they're gaining features, you're losing out. Or you're playing a short rest character, and the other characters don't need those short rests. So then you kind of feel guilty kind of forcing everyone into short rests over and over again. And short rests stop being about when they fit into an adventuring day, and they become this must-have thing because half the table have just lost all their uses of their features and they need that short rest to recover them. A more balanced game where features are recovered after long rests only means a short rest becomes something that all players are aligned with, a chance to rest and heal. Choosing when to use features stops being about whether you can pressure everyone else into a short rest that they don't need, and we can have breaks in the action that are more about when the action needs to be broken up. So, like I said, I assume that's the plan. That short rests are going to be for recovering hit points alone, and a number of features in the player's handbook that are going to have to change in order to make that happen. I should also point out that there are source books, Xanathars, and Tashas those are going to leave us with some short rest recovery features, and I have no idea if the revised Player's Handbook is going to include conversion for those features or not. But I'm not going to worry about it in this video. What I want to do in this video is concentrate on the Player's Handbook features I think are going to be changed, and how I think those might look, and how I hope they will look. One universal thing that I think is a reasonable assumption is that if switching a short rest mechanic for proficiency bonus uses per long rest is going to fit nicely, I think that's the best guess for what they're going to do. And that's going to come up a lot. But there are a number of features where I find that doesn't really work. So predicting what they're going to do in these cases, it is guesswork. But I think I have some ideas that could work and work reasonably well. Now, there is not much in the way of races that needs to change. Most of the races in the Player's Handbook have no short rest recovery features. The exception is the Dragonborn. The Dragonborn breath weapon recovers on a short rest. And this one, it's the easiest one to predict what they're going to do, because Fizban's Treasury of Dragons already shows us the solution they've come up with. Dragonborn variants in that book can use their breath weapon a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus per long rest, and in addition, the breath weapon for these variants can replace a single weapon attack as part of an attack action. I personally thought that was an excellent change, and I would expect the vanilla Dragonborn to get the same treatment. And I cannot recall any other Player's Handbook race that has short rest recovery features. Though we can probably safely guess, based on Monsters of the Multiverse, that things like sunlight sensitivity is going away for the drow, and dwarves, halflings, and gnomes are going to get a 30-foot movement speed. Now let's jump past the big one for now, which is classes. For now, let's look at feats. The Healer and Inspiring Leader feats are going to need a redesign. I think both of these are excellent candidates for the proficiency bonus uses per long rest mechanic. So Healer would no longer be, you can only heal any single creature once per short rest, but you can heal this much as an action, number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, recovering all uses after a long rest. Now that might end up being less uses than they would get now, so what they might also want to do is maybe increase the amount it heals. Inspiring Leader could be applied a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest, and since it requires 10 minutes, then you don't have any concerns about it being spammed in combat or anything, so that, I think, is just an easy fix. Martial Adept is also short rest recovery, and it too is a good candidate for the proficiency bonus standard. So proficiency bonus uses of the superiority die awarded from the feat. Now I hope feats get a bigger redesign than simply removing short rest recovery features, but for this video, that's the easiest and I think the most likely ways those feats have short rest mechanics removed. So let's get into the big one, classes and subclasses. Up first, the Barbarian. So it only has one short rest mechanic, and that's Relentless Rage gained at 11th level. Starting at 11th level, your rage can keep you fighting despite grievous wounds. If you drop to 0 hit points while you're raging and don't die outright, you can make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. If you succeed, you drop to 1 hit point instead. Each time you use this feature after the first, the DC increases by 5, and when you finish a short or long rest, the DC resets to 10. So this one, I think, is pretty easy. I mean, I never understood why you would rage, then use this feature, then finish the combat, walk around, then you get into another combat, you rage again, and the DC is still higher for some reason. I mean, I figure this always should have been just reset each time you rage. I think it just makes more sense, and I think that would be the easy fix. Barbarian rages are currently long rest recovery, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see the proficiency bonus per long rest mechanic applied to rages as well. Actually, there's a number of Barbarian things I wouldn't be surprised to see changed in the next Player's Handbook, but maybe that's a topic for another video. Neither of the two subclasses for Barbarian in the Player's Handbook have any short rest mechanics, so let's move on. Next, we got the Bards. And first off, Song of Rest is technically a short rest mechanic. So it says, beginning at 2nd level, you can use soothing music or oration to help revitalize your wounded allies during a short rest. You or any friendly creatures who can hear your performance regain hit points at the end of the short rest by spending 1 or more hit dice. Each of those creatures regains 1d6 hit points. The extra hit points increase when you reach certain levels in this class, d8 at 9th, d10 at 13th, and a d12 at 17th. Honestly, Song of Rest doesn't require a change. Since recovering hit points is part of a short rest, is one thing I'm assuming short rests will still be able to do. The feature that needs a redesign for bards is Font of Inspiration. Beginning when you reach 5th level, you regain all expended uses of your bardic inspiration when you finish a short or long rest. I think there's 3 ways they could go here. The first and most obvious option is just to increase the number of uses per long rest. So like you get twice your charisma modifier uses per long rest. Though inspiration uses, like rages, I wouldn't be surprised to be linked to your proficiency bonus as well, but it could go to twice your proficiency bonus. The second option would be to have inspiration recovered by some other means than just taking a long rest, other than a short rest. Like maybe you expend a spell slot and you recover a number of uses equal to the level of the spell slot. I'm not really a fan of that solution though, since basically we're just making inspiration worse. The third option, and the one I hope they would go with, is to make Font of Inspiration have your inspiration be better, rather than giving you more uses. Like, what if Font of Inspiration added your charisma modifier to the inspiration die roll? You would have the same number of inspiration uses, but every use would be more likely to turn a failed saving throw into success, or a missed attack into a hit, or the various things that subclasses can do with their inspiration points. That way you don't have any additional resources to track, but that resource is just better and more impactful on the game. I think it would also fit well with the subclass features, like cutting words being more impactful or blade flourishes being better. Fewer resources to track, but those resources end up being more powerful, and I think that would be the most elegant fix, at least in my opinion. And we could keep the capstone as it is. You roll initiative and you have 0 uses, you get 1 back. My suggestion, however, would be to recover 1 use regardless of whether you've completely tapped out or not. I don't understand why they put that requirement. Neither subclasses in the Player's Handbook, College of Lore, and College of Valor have any short rest mechanics. So that brings us to the Cleric. The base Cleric has 1 feature with short rest recovery, and that's Channel Divinity. At 2nd level, you gain the ability to channel divine energy directly from your deity, using that energy to fuel magical effects. You start with 2 such effects, Turn Undead, and an effect determined by your domain. Some domains grant you additional effects as you advance in levels, as noted in the domain description. When you use Channel Divinity, you choose which effect to create, and then you must finish a short or long rest to use your Channel Divinity again. So what's the fix here? I think the easy answer would be proficiency bonus per long rest. However, a Cleric's use of Channel Divinity currently scales with level. You get 2 uses at 6th level and 3 uses at 18th level. So that wouldn't really work with the proficiency bonus per long rest mechanic. Now, what you could do is you could multiply the proficiency bonus with each milestone. So you get your proficiency bonus uses at level 1, then twice your proficiency at level 6, and triple your proficiency at 18. But I don't think that's a great solution either, because you end up with a pretty big resource to track. I mean, at 18th level, that would be 18 Channel Divinity uses you'd have to keep track of. I think what you have to go with is 1 use per long rest, then 2 at 6, 3 at 18, but you give an alternate method to recover the uses. Something that isn't going to drain the Cleric of any additional resources, but probably also something that prevents them from doing it in combat. So you don't end up with spamming Channel Divinity over and over again. I think what I would do is I would tie the recovery to something a Cleric already does. Like maybe when you reduce an undead creature to 0 hit points, then you could recover a use of Channel Divinity. For Cleric subclasses that turn other kinds of creatures, you could include those creatures as options. However, another option, and the option I think I would go with, is have it be when you spend a spell slot to restore hit points to a creature, you also recover a use of Channel Divinity. Except to keep it out of combat, I would add anytime after you use a spell slot to restore hit points to a creature, you can then spend 1 minute in meditation to recover your Channel Divinity. That way, it doesn't get spammed over and over in combat. Now, there are a lot of Cleric domains in the Player's Handbook, but I only found one with a short rest recovery feature. Visions of the Past. Starting at 17th level, you can call up visions of the past that relate to an object you hold or your immediate surroundings. You spend at least 1 minute in meditation and prayer, then receive dreamlike, shadowy glimpses of recent events. You can meditate in this way a number of times equal to your wisdom score and must maintain concentration during that time as if you were casting a spell. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again till you finish a short or long rest. This one, it seems to be an obvious candidate for proficiency bonus per long rest, so I think that's probably the way they'll go. Let's move on to the Druid. Alright, so Wild Shape. Currently usable twice with recovery after a short or long rest. In other words, it's usable the exact same number of times as Blade Song was usable for Blade Singers before the Tash's redesign. And I think it's reasonable to assume they would do the exact same thing here. Proficiency bonus uses per long rest. Now, I think that's a nerf, right? Because if you can do 2 times per short rest, you're probably doing more than proficiency bonus times per long rest. But honestly, I just hope Wild Shape gets a full redesign. Not just long rest recovery, but in what forms you can take and how they are applied. I covered some ideas for that already in my Fixing Wild Shape video. Now, Circle of the Moon doesn't have any unique short rest recovery features, but Circle of the Land does. Natural recovery allows the Druid to recover spell slots on a short rest once per long rest. This feature basically is identical to the Wizard's Arcane Recovery, and I think they will be handled in the exact same way. The thing is, these features are already a long rest mechanic. 1 use per long rest. Tying it to a short rest is actually incidental. You could simply tie it to anything, like the Druid concentrates for a minute and then uses this feature once per long rest. It's just an easy fix, and Arcane Recovery could have the exact same fix. Next up is a big one. The fighter has lots of short rest major features, so let's tackle them one at a time. First up, Second Wind. Does proficiency bonus uses per long rest work here? Yeah, I think it does, so that's probably the way they would go. Second up is Action Surge. Now, Action Surge is pretty dramatic, and if you just did proficiency bonus uses per long rest, then you would have a situation where the fighter could use Action Surges back to back, and that really would change things. Currently, for a fighter to use Action Surge back to back, they need to be 17th level when they get a second use. Now, I'm not against giving fighters a boost, but I think we could handle this in a more moderate fashion. Like, what if when you roll initiative, you recover your Action Surge? That way you could use it once per combat. Because you're capped at 1 use, and there's not really any out of combat uses for the feature, there wouldn't be any Bag of Rats exploit either. I'll talk more about Bag of Rats later. At 17th level, you would get both uses of Action Surge when you roll initiative. And, this would be a boost for fighters, but 1 Action Surge per combat I don't think is out of hand. Champions and Eldritch Knights don't have short rest recovery features, but the big one, obviously, is the Battle Master. Their primary feature, combat superiority dice, are recovered after a short or long rest. Proficiency bonus uses per long rest doesn't really work here. I mean, I think it works for the Martial Adept feat, but I don't think it works for the actual Battle Master, since the Battle Master currently has 4 dice, and that scales to 6. So proficiency bonus uses per long rest would be a huge hit to this subclass. Like with Inspiration, we could make a bigger resource pool, but that would give us a bigger resource pool to keep track of as well. I'm sort of wondering if our best solution here is, like with Action Surge, you recover the die pool at the start of combat. However, Battle Master is already one of the better fighter subclasses, so I would be hesitant to boost it that much without boosting other fighter subclasses as well. So instead, maybe the Battle Master gets 2 dice to start, and then 3 at 7 and 4 at 15, and those are recovered at the start of a combat. In total uses, that, in theory, should put them pretty close to what they have now, and it would be easy to track. And we come to the Monk, and it is no secret that I do not like the key point mechanic. 1 pool that fuels practically everything, and since those options aren't really equivalent to each other, it ends up being 1 pool to cover 1 or 2 features, and the rest basically aren't used. I really don't think more key points is the answer either, because it doesn't fix that same problem. So instead of having a massive pool of key points that comes back after every long rest that you got to keep track of, I would propose this. And this is going to be one of my more radical suggestions, but what if the Monk didn't have key points? So let's start with the second level stuff. We have Flurry of Blows, Patient Defense, and Step of the Wind. What would happen if these were just something you could do with your bonus action with no resource required? Let's look at them one at a time. Well, Flurry of Blows, I'll tell you right now, it'd be fine. The math has been done on this. Unlimited flurry of blows does not break the game or make the monks overpowered at all. Step of the Wind shouldn't use a resource in the first place. Cunning Action didn't break the rogue. Step of the Wind without a resource cost would not break the monk. Patient Defense, however, this is the one I would be concerned about. Dodging every round as a bonus action would be really dramatic. But what if Patient Defense wasn't a dodge action? In that regards, what if it wasn't a bonus action either? I mean, what you could do is Patient Defense could read, when you are attacked by a creature you can see, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on the attack roll. In addition, if you make a dexterity saving throw, you can use your reaction to gain advantage on the saving throw. So you'd be limited to one attack or saving throw between your turns, and it would prevent other reaction options. I think that could work. However, I would prefer a fix that keeps it as a bonus action. So then we're choosing between three options just as we are now. So instead of a dodge action that you can use your bonus action, you get a +2 to your armor class and any dexterity saving throws until the start of your next turn. So instead of focusing on speed or number of attacks, you're using your bonus action to fight defensively. I think that option, personally, would work best. So now none of those three features would require tracking resources at all, and none of them would be game-breaking. Then we have Deflect Missiles. This gives a key point option to throw back the missile they deflected as part of their reaction. Could this be free? Personally, I don't think there would be a problem with that at all. So you deflect, you catch the arrow, you throw it back. Next up, and this is a bigger one, Stunning Strike. So I think we could all agree this is the one that is going to require some more thought. I just don't think we can make Stunning Strike free. Stunning Strike on every attack, it is too much. Proficiency bonus per long rest is an option, but I think maybe that doesn't give us enough uses. One possible solution is to not have it use a resource, but instead use a bonus action. So when you hit a creature with a melee weapon attack, you can use your bonus action to attempt a Stunning Strike. I think that could be reasonably balanced, but I'm not sure monk players would be fans of having to give up their bonus actions to attempt a Stunning Strike. I think maybe the best solution is to take a look at what we did with fighters in Action Surge and having uses recover when you roll initiative. So with Stunning Strike, what you could do is you get your proficiency bonus uses of Stunning Strike and they're recovered when you roll initiative. That would give the monk player the option to do that full attack with flurry of blows and apply those stunning strikes that they enjoy. But it would limit the number of times this could be done with a resource pool that would be pretty easy to keep track of. Next up is Diamond Soul. So this gives the monk proficiency in all saving throws, and that doesn't need revision. But it also gives the option to re-roll a failed saving throw using your reaction and a key point. Again, I think the easy solution here is simply not have it require a key point. The reaction required already limits its use. Empty Body at level 18, well, Astral Projection, just make it once per long rest. Invisible and Damage Resistance, just make it proficiency bonus uses per long rest. And we need to adjust the capstone, which is good because the capstone is awful. There's probably elegant and creative options, but if we wanted to go simple, like the Barbarian, we could get +4 to our two most important ability scores. In the case of Monk, that would be Dexterity and Wisdom. With Way of the Open Hand, the only feature that would need redesign is Quivering Palm, and proficiency bonus per long rest I think works fine here. Way of Shadow, well, with Shadow Arts, you could have each spell castable once per long rest, and that would take care of the whole subclass. Alternatively, it could be cast the spell of your choice, proficiency bonus times per long rest. Both solutions I think work fine. Here's the one that needs the biggest redesign, since pretty much everything they do is tied to key. I have played with this before, and just giving them spell slots like an Arcane Trickster or an Eldritch Knight doesn't work unless you redesign the elemental disciplines. But I think a solution could be that you could perform a number of elemental disciplines equal to your proficiency bonus per long rest, and they're cast at the level as if you spent the maximum key possible based on the spells and key points table right here. And just as it is currently, Elemental Attunement would be the exception. This one would continue to not use any resources. That brings us to the Paladin. And like with Clerics, Channeled Divinity is a short rest recovered feature. Now, if you recall, with Clerics I suggested recovering the Channel Divinity when they use a spell slot to recover hit points. Would the same solution work here? I think it would. You could also alter it to be more, Paladin-y, so you could allow the option when they use a smite, for example. Like with the Cleric, I would limit it to out of combat, so they would need that 1 minute in meditation to prevent spamming Channel Divinity in combat. And none of the Paladin subclasses in the Player's Handbook would require any changes. The Ranger has nothing recovered on a short rest, so no fixes are required there. Though I do hope they make the optional class features from Tasha's part of the base class. The Rogue is really easy. Just the capstone needs a change. Proficiency bonus uses prolonged rest works here, so that's probably the fix. And none of the subclasses in the Player's Handbook have short rest recovery features. And although I would love some tweaks on the Rogue, one of the things I do appreciate about the design of the Rogue is most of their features don't use resources. They can just do them. That's something I hope we see more of in the new Player's Handbook, and I'll talk about that with a major example later in this video. For the base Sorcerer, all we need to do is address the capstone. Sorceress Restoration allows you at 20th level to regain 4 expended sorcery points whenever you finish a short rest. I like having a sorcery point recovery mechanic here, but maybe it's all your sorcery points once per long rest. Or if that seems like too much, maybe it's 8 sorcery points. And then I would probably require like a minute of downtime, so a minute of concentration or a minute of meditation so that it doesn't get done in the middle of combat. And the Draconic and Wild Magic Bloodlines don't have short rest recovery mechanics at all to worry about. Now the next alphabetically is the Warlock. This is another really big one, and we just have Wizards and Warlocks left, so let's do the easier Wizard first. So for the base class, all we really have to worry about is Arcane Recovery, and I covered this already when we were talking about Natural Recovery. My suggestion was you can do this once per long rest, and it requires a minute to use. And that's all you got to worry about on the base class. With subclasses, we have the Third Eye feature for Divination Wizards. You gain the benefits of the feature until you take a short rest or long rest. So instead the feature could just be, after you take a long rest, and it lasts until you complete your next long rest. That's potentially a small nerf. You're still using the feature all day. Though I could see them maybe allowing the wizard to change it once per long rest as an action or something. The Illusionist has Illusory Self, which works once per short rest or long rest, and this is an easy proficiency bonus per long rest revision. The Transmuter has Shape Changer, once again, once per short or long rest, and we could just make it proficiency bonus times per long rest. Now I would hope it's going to get a bigger redesign though. It's just not a great feature. And that brings us back to the Warlock. Really, there's only one feature on the base class that's a short rest recovery, and it just happens to be the big feature, which is Pact Magic. Now what are they going to do about Pact Magic? Well, what they could do, and honestly I think they might do this, is just give the Warlock normal spell slots. I hope they don't, but I think that might be what they do. Personally, I like that Warlocks work differently than other spellcasters. But if they did proficiency bonus spells per long rest, it's not enough. That would be a massive hit to this class. One possibility, though, that I find myself coming back to is having number of uses per combat. Like at first level, 1 pack slot, and you get it back when you roll initiative. Though unlike other cases where I thought this might be a solution, here we actually do have a Bag of Rats problem. So Bag of Rats is an optimization term. Basically, we use it if you could exploit a feature by carrying around a Bag of Rats and then initiating combat with one of them to recover a feature and exploit it, then that's a design issue. Since pack slots do have out of combat uses, well, then we have the Bag of Rats problem. So proficiency bonus isn't really working here. Once per combat isn't really working here. Spell slots like other casters does work, but it's going to make the class more boring. So hear me out. What if we got rid of pack slots entirely? Instead, we give the Warlock more and better invocation options. Like, take a look at the Misty Visions invocation. You can cast Silent Image at will without expending a spell slot or material components. So you take this invocation and you can cast Silent Image as often as you like. There's no limit to the number of times you can cast it. You take the invocation, you can cast a spell. We see similar invocations for Mage Armor and for False Life. We even see it for some degree with Levitate, but there are some added restrictions. And I think that's fine because it makes it a bit more unique for Warlocks. I think we'd need to give the Warlock a lot more invocations, and you would need a lot more invocations for them to select from. So then the Warlock isn't really a conventional spellcaster anymore that uses spell slots. Instead, they're a class with magical powers, allowing them to cast spells without limit. Obviously, the power of the spells would need to be a little bit behind the casters that need to use spell slots because of the ability to cast them as often as they like. Determining what that would look like is a big project. It might be one I do an entire video to at some point, but it would be an entire video. I hope the designers go that way. It would keep the Warlock interesting and not just another spellcaster. And then you would have no resources to track. Wouldn't that be easy? And those are my speculations for what the designers might do to remove short rest recovery features from the game. Or at least what I hope they'll do. Tell me below whether removing short rest recovery features sounds like a good change to you, and what kind of changes would you like to see? Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.